Hello, we are the V25E Bridge team. We come from WPI in the United States, and we are partnering with Serendipity for this project in the hopes of telling you more about accessibility in Venice. But first, we're going to start by talking about the history of innovation for Venetian bridges. Here's a timeline showing over time the different innovations that have happened. We're going to start in 421, in a time before bridges existed in Venice. At this time, horses were allowed through the city, and instead of real bridges, they had sort of wooden planks that they would lay across the canals. In 1181, we see the first pontoon bridge that was across the Grand Canal, and then the first wooden drawbridge in 1255, which is the first iteration of the Rialto Bridge. This is a drawbridge style which had its setbacks, i.e. people would walk across the bridge and it would consistently collapse, dropping all of the pedestrians into the canal below. So in 1591, the Rialto was redesigned into the modern stone design that we know today. In the 1600s, they followed the Rialto and they started shifting towards stone bridges. And then in 1854, they built the Accademia using steel and iron. The Accademia was then altered in the 1900s to be reinforced with wood and steel. In the 2000s, Venice started shifting towards the more sleek, modern designs of bridges. In 2008, the Calatrava Bridge was created out of glass, steel, and wood. Unfortunately, this caused many injuries as pedestrians would slip on the glass steps. On the right, you can see the Ponte Valeria Solesi, which is a perfect example of an accessible bridge. There are no steps, it's flat across, and there are no accessibility alterations that need to happen for this bridge. So accessibility is important in Venice, especially because the bridges are the main means of travel from one island to another. So anyone with a disability or any sort of mobility impairment would need these bridges to be accessible to get around the city.
So although we've come a long way, it's important to assess what options of accessibility have been done in the past. Firstly, we have mechanical options with, in 2006, being the Ponte Longo in Giudecca, which featured a double elevator lift system used to override the steps for use of the flat section of the bridge. It suffered from misuse as it was meant solely for the mobility impaired and had compromised mechanics due to the salient conditions. In 2013 to 2015, on the Ponte della Calatrava, the Ovavia lift system made the Ponte della Calatrava the only accessible bridge over the Grand Canal. It suffered from excessive interior heat, especially during summer months, and also suffered compromised mechanics due to sailing conditions. So what attempts have worked? Now looking at more stationary options, such as the Ponte Votivo della Salute, which is a temporary ramped bridge only erected on November 21st, and it increases pedestrian flow to the Church of Santa Maria della Salute. Another strong option is the Venice Marathon ramps, one of them being the Ponte della Veneta Marina, which was a ramp more permanently placed after the Venice Marathon and used on a daily basis by large numbers of people.
So where do we come in? Well, to help the city keep up with changing times and with the innovation of future bridges, we've decided to look at the existing infrastructure of Venice and see how we can make bridges more accessible throughout the city. In order to do so, we must look at previously collected bridge data that we have available to us. In 1990, Serendipity collected data on 437 bridges, identifying them and adding them to a bridge database. They collected data such as the number of arches and the number of steps. In terms of maintenance data, they collected the date of last restoration, allowing the city to have that data for future bridge restoration purposes. Here are the 437 bridges that were previously collected in the 1990s.
So, what exactly did we do for our data collection phase? Wrong way. We performed measurements focusing on accessibility features such as ramps and railings for 451 bridges throughout the historic city of Venice and Giudecca. We also performed pedestrian counts over common points of congestion in the city. To collect data, we visited every single bridge and filled a survey out for each one with the ArcGIS software partnered with Survey123. This allowed us to automatically upload our data into the existing database. This here is a map of all the bridges that we visited over the span of 2 weeks to collect data such as the presence of ramps, the steps, the width of the steps, the distance from the door to the bottom of the stairs on each side of the street, and the condition of the bridge. Out of the 451 bridges, 80 of them are private. For the purposes of this project, we've decided to focus more on the public bridges than the private bridges. And here are the newly built bridges. Here's a map of the newly built bridges that don't have any pre-existing data in the system.
So what key takeaways can we get from our data collection on Venetian bridges? Well, when we're looking at our data, we categorize it into 3 areas, that being congestion, accessibility, and condition. From this, we're able to analyze how accessible a bridge is. Working alongside the V25 streets team, we collected pedestrian data on points of congestion within the city. Streets team will be talking more in depth about this during their presentation. For our part, we compiled the data we had into 2 charts. Here is the first one being the total pedestrian traffic across 5 popular bridges in Venice that were collected at 9, 12, 15, and 1800 hours. As you can see here, the Ponte della Paella was by far the most congested, where that difference only became more exaggerated as the day went on. In our second chart, when we collected the total population, we distinguished tourists from locals, or attempted to. At the same exact times, we took that data and combined them between the 5 bridges to have our total counts. You can see here that the local traffic was at peak at 900 hours and decreased as the day went on, whereas the tourist traffic was at its lowest at 9 and increased as the day went on, reaching a peak at 1500 hours. Moving on to condition data, we collected, substantial missing pieces, substantial cracks, and railing damages as indicators for repair, potential repair. Here you can see some of the damages that we've come across during our investigation. Lastly, we collected accessibility on bridges.
To get a larger scale on how accessible Venice is, this is the 451 total bridges in the Venice Historical Center. And these are the 42 accessible bridges in the city. To recognize types of ramps, we have to distinguish and assess accessibility to find the certain options. Firstly, we have integrated ramps, which have accessibility built into its design. Then we have step ramps, which are simply placed over the steps. And then we have traditional ramps, which take up the most space but have the most appropriate inclinations. This diagram simply visualizes the 6.8 degree maximum allowable angle in Venice, whereas in the historic city of Venice, we have a 9 degree median angle. And this is most likely offset due to the higher inclination of step ramps and or the limited room in the city. Accessibility benefits the population. So not only does accessibility benefit people in wheelchairs, canes or walkers, those who are physically impaired, but even on more common circumstances, such as mothers who have young children, strollers, tourists with luggage, and even those with groceries.
Now, for our next step, we'll be looking at Venetian islands, the accessibility of Venetian islands as a whole. is this map here. The highlighted blue islands are all the islands accessible by the ACTV dock or accessible by bridge. Note that the grayed out islands are not accessible at all. This next map, the highlighted islands are islands accessible by the ACTV docks only, not by bridge. And this last map are islands that are only accessible by bridges. These maps, on these maps, we examined the accessibility of Venice, Venetian islands, through various boat stops. The top left over here is the first boat stop that pedestrians come across when they come from the airport. There are only 4 accessible islands. The top right has 7 accessible islands from the Zatere boat stop. The bottom left has 2 boat stops that are close to the Rialto. Because that's where most of the tourists spend their time. Even though there are 16 accessible islands, the Rialto itself is not accessible. And Giudecca has 2 accessible islands, starting from the Palanca boat stop.
So lastly, we're going to talk about some recommendations for future IQP groups as well as the City of Venice. So for future IQP groups, we would recommend looking at our ramp data and our measurements from step to door to figure out which ramps would suit various bridges to see what bridges could feasibly become accessible. We would also recommend that some of the various bridges throughout Venice get a little bit extra TLC. This map shows the total bridges with cracks and substantial damage. And this map shows all of the bridges that are on the brink of on the brink of collapse. So this one in particular, the Ponte Loredan, this is a wooden bridge that, as you can see, has sustained a lot of damage on the support posts from the salinity in the water. There are also 0 accessible bridges along the Grand Canal. So in the future, we would recommend the construction of an accessible bridge and/or trying to see if it's feasible to make one of the 4 bridges along the Grand Canal accessible. So this bridge, the Ponte Raspi, is a perfect example of an accessible bridge. This bridge has an integrated ramp style, so there are no need for any sort of other ramps to be added to it. In 2008, it was renovated to match this style, but as you can see, it still looks like the traditional stepped ramps, and it does mimic that style. So this is a great innovation for Venice, and in the future, other bridges could be used like that, or could be reshaped to be like this. Grazie.
Just for the congestion slide, when you're looking at the number of tourists and the number of residents, how were you guys able to determine the difference?
All right, I can take a shot at this.
That's a question you have to ask the streets team.
The streets team has a whole in-depth analysis that we went over with. It was outlined just. It's hard to say. Some things are maybe. I'm trying to find words right now.
There's a lot of variables you could look at, like such as the way that somebody's walking, the speed, what they're carrying. They're usually carrying less turning around and looking because they know their environment already. It's like, and then especially handbags, pets, stuff like that like it would be hard to travel with, especially.
There are also a lot of people that will walk by you speaking English and looking confused. They have the classic tourist look. They got the Hawaiian shirt. They got the cargo shorts with the shirt tucked in, the sunscreen on their nose, the classic look.
You could also hear Google Maps on their phone on full volume.
So you guys talked a bit about the condition that some of the bridges are in. Do you know how often there's actually bridge accidents, maybe a bridge collapse or somebody falling off of it? Is that something that ever happens?
In the old days, the bridges didn't have railings, and it was sort of a Venetian pastime to have big fistfights on top of bridges and push people off. And there's paintings by famous people that depict that. So it was kind of a thing to do, just fight on top of the bridge. Something fraternity brothers would probably do. I can see that happening. Okay, anybody else? All right, thank you guys.